Hello there, thanks for clicking on this video. My name is Jay, and one wheels have taken over my life so much that every other night I'll have nightmares about my one wheels either being stolen or them spontaneously exploding. And I don't know if that's healthy or not, and I don't know what to do about that. And today I want to do a short video on how to uninstall and reinstall a new Thor controller. At some point during your VES experience, you're going to have to repair your own board, whether that's removing and installing a new controller or putting in a new battery or even a new motor. You're going to need a certain set of skills to be able to own and operate your new board. That's the beauty of where we're at today with our board sports. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to remove and install a new Thor. All right, listen, the Thor400 is not as straightforward as the Thor301. At this moment in time, the bottom FETs are exposed. So that means if it touches any metal, it's going to short and blow up. With that in mind, we do have a mounting procedure to follow. We have a specialized thermal pad and a 3D printed spacer. Both of these are extremely important to mounting your controller. The thermal pad has a special plastic lining going over top of it that makes it so that it's puncture resistant, but also can still transfer heat. And the spacer is specially designed to stop the capacitor legs from shorting out against any surface. Should I get this up more close now? Wouldn't that be smart for me to do? I think so. I think that would be smart for me to do. Listen, if this video looks eerily similar to another video you might have just now watched, you don't gotta say nothing, alright? Cool, let's move on. All right, let's start just by removing our foot pad and getting access to the controller box. All of the screws on this controller box are going to be M2. Let's go ahead and just pick her up on over. Angle switch, whoa. Let's unplug our battery lead so that the controller is no longer being supplied power. And then let's press the button so that we can discharge the capacitors on the controller. This is going to make it so that the controller is now safe to work on. There's not going to be any residual electricity left inside of the controller. So if a screw drops or anything, it's not going to immediately blow up on you. Let's start by removing all of the connectors. I'm pulling all of these up with a pair of needle nose pliers because I know how to pull them up, but if you're not careful, you could break these connectors. So remove these at your own discretion. I'm gonna cover up my battery lead because this has too much electricity inside of it for me to feel comfortable working around. This is my 30S board, so I have 126 volts of electricity on these wires. I'd rather not accidentally lick these if I can. To start removing the controller out of the box, we're going to use a combination of M2 and M3 Allen wrenches. I'm going to start by removing the light bar first, but sometimes these are a little bit difficult to get off because they'll spin the post beneath it. So I'm going to use a pair of needle nose pliers to help give myself some leverage. Be careful doing this because the capacitors are a little bit loose and you don't want to hurt them too bad. These mounting posts are a little difficult to get out. You have to get the proper leverage on them to be able to unscrew them and pull them out. All right, now to remove the rest of the screws. There's two on top, if you can think of it in an orientation like that, and there's going to be one in the middle. Again, this is why we discharge the caps on our controller, because the one in the middle, once you unscrew it, it's just going to fall onto all of the electronic bits inside, and it will blow up if you have electricity inside. So make sure that you discharge your caps before doing this step. So since this controller is already installed, it's only being held on to by a thermal pad. All you have to do is heat this up with a heat gun or a hair dryer, and it'll take that hard thermal pad and turn it into a little bit more of a paste so that it's easier to remove. Why am I removing the controller and thermal pad on my already working board if it already has a thermal pad? The mounting setup that was first used with Thor controllers wasn't the most adequate one and would lead to bad failures. So we've since then changed up our mounting methods, and I'm just updating my board to our current methods. After you've heated up the bottom of your controller box a good amount, go ahead and pull up on the controller and it should easily lift out. See, there's a thermal pad that I was talking about, just not the best one in the world. It did the job, but not good enough. So I'm just gonna rip her up and out. Here's our special thermal pad with a puncture-proof piece of plastic on it. And here is our 3D printed spacer. First, you're gonna line up the thermal pad onto the bottom of the controller. You'll see that the center hole isn't completely even in the middle. That's the match to the other mounting screw that's on there. So just make sure that this mounts. Peel off both sides of the protective film on the thermal pad. And then you're going to put down your 3D printed spacer. The thicker side of this spacer goes beneath the caps. This is to protect the caps from shorting out against the bottom. I found difficulty putting the screws down through all of it before putting it through the thermal pad. Like, you just have 3 layers of holes that you have to work through. So I found it much easier to stick the screws through once I put down the thermal pad, then putting the 30 spacer down over top of the screws. It is very important that your screws have these plastic nylon washers on the bottom of them. If they don't, you are putting a bare metal screw down on an electrically charged PCB bottom, and it can short out. I've seen it happen before. Please don't mess with it. Make sure that your mounting posts have that nylon washer. So to put in these mounting screws, I've always found difficulty putting them in by themselves. What I do is that I'll put in the M2 screw already into the mounting post, and then I'll screw down the entire thing as one assembly. And once I get both the mounting screws in, I'll hold them with an Allen wrench and then back out that screw so that I can put the light bar back down. It's just easier to get leverage on it like this. Alright, so here is the pinout for the Thor400. For the lights, they work in one big chain. So first comes the status, then the front LEDs, then the rear LEDs. But know that there is an order to how these are plugged in. If you haven't noticed by now, I do have a different Thor400 than you probably do. I have a Thor400 V1. You most likely have a green V2. The only major difference between these two models is that the CAN bus has a separate connector from it. So the pinouts look a little bit different, but they're essentially exactly the same. Alright, so plugging in our controller is an interesting thing. Okay, listen, I have to pause the video before I even plug in these XT60s. This video was recorded before our implementation of fuses. While recording and editing this video, we just collectively learned as a community how important discharge fuses are with our high voltage builds. High voltage builds are significantly more dangerous than low voltage builds. The consequences are much higher and graver than they ever have been before. If you decide to not use a fuse, you are walking a very dangerous edge of having a board fire. But shortly after this video is released, Fungineers will make available our own discharge fuses. All of our battery packs will have their own discharge fuses, and there are multiple other vendors inside of the space that sell their own discharge fuses. Down below or attached to this video, I will have linked discharge fuses that you can buy from either Fungineers or other reputable vendors inside of the scene. Please buy these and use this on your discharge line. Alright, back to the very ending of the video. This controller is rated for very high voltage batteries, so plugging them in is a little bit more dangerous than any other type of battery. Ideally, you would pre-charge your controller so that there is no inrush current spark, but at the moment, we don't really have a good way of doing that. You could chain together a few XT60s or XT90s to be able to negate the spark, or you could plug your controller in with your charger first to fill up the capacitors, but we don't have a streamlined way of doing this. So if you're plugging in and out a Thor400 controller, just do your best to not make it like a morning ritual and make it a one-time thing if you can. Alright, now with my controller working and everything back together, I'm just going to zip tie everything back down because this board does see an amazing amount of hell and I don't feel like having all these things jumping around my entire controller box. And we are done. Put it back together, reprogram it, and you're good to go. Thanks for watching.